Hi friends, welcome back. So question for you, are we in a new bull run or is this the very top? That's the subject of today's video. And in fact, every time I look at the market, it is always the same answer. What is the question? What did you wish you would have YOLO'd on? The answer, Nvidia. Who doesn't know that? Nvidia's up another 3% today. And every time I look at this thing, I just always think markets be crazy. The basic gist of it is that at the moment, our markets are driven on the hype of AI, and it depends if you believe in the hype or not. So I am not necessarily a AI hyper, but I can read numbers and I can see that Nvidia just keeps going up. That's the question. Is this a new bull run? Are we going to keep going more up crazy with Nvidia? I just was looking as well. I think it's like the third largest company in the world in terms of market cap. Will it pass Apple? Will it pass Microsoft and become number one? If that is indeed the case, I'm going to call top on that. It's already at number 3. I think already there it's still hype, but again, that's just my opinion. And I'd like to hear you guys' stuff on this as well. Now, why do I say opinion? Because it's crazy when you see this data that comes out. So like this was the headline today. Private payroll growth slows to 152,000 in May, much less than expected, meaning that job growth is slowing. And yet we're all excited about AI. So I guess if you want to put the two together, you're like, hey, let's not hire so many humans. Let's hire a whole bunch of computers, and therefore let's buy Nvidia. I guess that would be the logic in that. And the problem though with this, and we've talked about this before on the channel, is if you end up hiring a whole bunch of robots slash AI, and you don't have humans working, who's going to buy said products that you're trying to sell, right? I mean, in order for a healthy economy to flow, you need consumers to buy said things. At least that's in the US, right? Consumers are a big part of the market. So I'm always sort of watching the play between, oh my God, all the companies are going to be using robots and AI. And also too, are humans going to be actually buying said, products produced by robots and AI? You guys get my point on that. Also too, if you want to take a look at which sectors are positive and negative, so it's not necessarily everything. You can see here, tech was the big winner along with comm service. That's going to be your like Nvidia's, that kind of stuff. And then the losers today were actually financial, energy, real estate, utilities, and consumer staples. So you do have a split market there. It may not necessarily appear when you take a look at various ways of investing, be it momentum, growth, or value, low volatility, because the tech is so overweighted in many of the funds or slash ways that you put your indexes together, that it sort of overshadows the losers, right? And that's been a big problem also too at the S&P 500, where Nvidia is like, I think the last time I checked, it was like 40% of gains the S&P is due to Nvidia, but now maybe up to half. It just keeps going up like crazy. Now, there's a big event that happened just recently today, actually. Bank of Canada cut rates. Now, if you follow my channel, you're probably curious how many Canadians watch, and I'm going to tell you, 7% of my channel viewership in the last 28 days are from Canada. So I'd love to hear from Canadians. I always like to hear this stuff. I'm American, so we talk a lot more about American equities, American market, these kind of things, but I don't ignore Canada, especially when they're cutting rates. I guess they're the first in the G7 to do that. Just a refresher, so G7 is Germany, UK, France, Canada, US, Italy, and Japan. And again, Canada is the first to cut rates. Now, I told you guys before, is this a new bull run market or not? Now, there's a couple of different ways you could read this. On the positive, you'd say, well, yes, they're cutting rates. It's going to be easier to get money. Liquidity is there. Everyone's going to throw all their money in the market, etc. On the negative aspect of, you'd say, well, the economy in Canada is not so great. Unemployment's going up, right? People are concerned about their jobs, and the economic conditions aren't so good. So the reason why you would cut rates is to spur economic development, right? So there's a couple of different ways that you could look at it. You're cutting rates because things are awesome and inflation's under control, or you're cutting rates because things aren't so awesome and you need to try to spur growth. And that's always the balance for central banks, is you want to have policy that's neither restrictive or too much, how can I say, what's the right word to say, growthy, or I can't think of the word. I'm kind of blanking on here. They always say it's either too restrictive or too accommodative. We'll use that word, or too dovish or hawkish. You want to use that word as well. So I'm trying to get clever with my words, but it happens sometimes when you go blank. But the thing that's interesting about the Canada situation is that they're actually were raising rates ahead of the USA, and now they're cutting rates ahead of the USA, right? So they're actually ahead of that. The bet currently, if you're curious about what's going on in USA on the Fed, is like 50-50 chance of a rate cut in September. That's the bet. And that's what the markets are thinking, at least. My particular opinion on this stuff is that the Fed should just stand pat for the rest of the year, because I do think inflation is a real concern. This is something that is fascinating topic always, right? Because sometimes when people look at these, numbers, and we're going to use Canada as an example and say, oh, look at this, inflation is cooling. Don't think necessarily that prices are coming down. It's just that the growth of prices going up is slower, right? So one of the issues is that it's actually interesting. I'll just give you an example. So we're here in Korea, and we look around and say real estate. There's still, the bubble hasn't popped. It's been a bubble for years. Things just keep going up and up and up and up. And also too, we look at the price of just your regular everyday things. Just living, food still seems really expensive. And moreover, we actually see, and I'm talking about here in Korea, we actually see stores closing and companies hiring less. So this is sort of where it's like, okay, is it a good rate cut or a bad rate cut? And that's the question I pose to you, because you're going to know from your neck of the woods, because this is something that I always share also too on the channel, regardless of what the larger, macro environment is. If you have a great job and you're doing great, you're smiling and happy. If you just lost your job, so for example, Google, like their cloud, I think they cut like 100 and some jobs. Microsoft, their cloud department also cut jobs. We know Tesla's been firing as well. So everyone's situation is going to be different, of course. The issue becomes also too is like, where do you put your money? Because obviously that's a fundamental question when you watch a channel like this. Like, hey, so is it everything all in stocks, etc.? My point of view on this stuff is always the same. Is you should stay diversified. Because you just don't know exactly what's going to happen, right? I can show you all the indicators, possible stuff like that. I can even show you this. Here's another example. Americans have more investment income than ever before, meaning that people have more money in equities and things. But my personal opinion on this thing is I think it's largely due to inflation. So, when you look at like, hey, I have more money in portfolio than I did, 40 years ago, but obviously there's more money in the world, things cost more, these kind of stuff. The other issue as well, which when we talk about, are we in a new bull market or whatever, liquidity is still there, and the hype is still there in the market. So that part is real. I use GameStop as an example. I actually thought that this stuff would be done with. I thought we were done with the meme stock stuff and the crazy doggy cryptos and that kind of thing. But evidently not. In this past month, GameStop's up 84%. And if you guys remember, there was like this crazy pump with, Roaring Kitty, whether or not, he controls his Twitter or not, who knows? There's some debate on whether or not that's actually him tweeting, but he tweeted out a picture of like some person sitting forward. And then recently on Reddit, there was like revealed the account that he did a big options play. I think it was like $180 million, some crazy number like that. As of now, as I just checked, I think the stock was up 16% on the day. And this is a meme play. Now, some of the people who are in this thing, and if you are, you can put a shout out in the comments, they'll say, hey, we got to give it to the hedgies, that kind of stuff, fight the man. What's actually really interesting, Gary Gensler in the SEC, and sometimes those kind of people also complain about the SEC, they actually try to fight the man in terms of private equity. Evidently, I guess they were trying to pass some new proposals to have more transparency and things like that among private equity firms. They lost. It went to court. They lost, and I guess the transparency is not going to come. So if you wanted more transparency, you're not going to get it. On the side of the private equity, the argument would be, you're just slowing us down with more regulations. It's going to cost us more money, etc. And we may cost investors more money because we have to spend more money to meet your regulations and stuff like that, and that only hurts investors. So either side could make the case, right? So it's either, do you want more transparency? Maybe things are going to be slower, or would you rather have, hey, no transparency, lots of side deals, stuff like that. Hey, but we may benefit investors overall. So both sides would make an argument. I tend to be more on the regulation side. That's just me, but I can understand the other argument as well. Speaking of regulations, there was also another really interesting headline today. FTC, they're going after some sort of alcohol company. So it's called Southern Glacier Wine and Spirits. So for those of you in the restaurant business, you probably know about this stuff. My understanding of it, this thing is like, they're using an old law. I think it's like 1936, something like that. And this is Lena Khan. So I'm a big fan. I'll state it flat out. I'm a big fan of her. She's going after monopolies, these kind of things. Big fan. I mean, you guys know that that they were going after Apple, going after Live Nation, this kind of stuff. This one is an interesting one, but I think the topic, the concept was can a company sell the same product at different prices to two different places? And that's an interesting question. So they would say no. You got a monopoly and you shouldn't be doing that. So try to be fair to everyone. Moreover, there's actually another story which I think is a really good one, and it's kind of just going through different stories today. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening in the market. Was this Archer aviation thing? So if you've been following this one, the stock, in my opinion, it was a bit of a scam. It launched up really high, all this hype we're gonna have basically flying cars essentially. It's not exactly a car, but the basic idea is that more taxis in the air essentially, right? Yes, we have helicopters now already. So my question would be like, how big of a market is private helicopters? Because this essentially is just a faster helicopter. It's a plane, it's a vertical takeoff plane, but it's kind of the same idea. And how big of a market is this? So, they're going to make the case that, that they're going to be a huge market. Everyone's going to be using these things. The range of these things is actually quite small. So it was saying here, Archer's demonstration aircraft maker can fly up to 60 miles at top speeds of, so the range is 60 miles and then it goes like 150 miles an hour. And then they're saying their new one, they're calling it the Midnight, flies like 100 miles. And that's range. So their speed is 150, range is either between 60 to 100, something like that. And the question I pose is like, how big of a market is there going to be for this kind of thing? And who would want that? I think probably the pros in this thing, that they're going to make the case that with vertical takeoff, it'll be more usable. Maybe you can go a little bit faster than a helicopter, right? Or maybe a lot faster. And you guys can argue on that kind of stuff, but how big of a market is this? Archer would obviously say it's a huge market. And the other thing too, I thought was kind of interesting, because they got a FAA certification, I guess, is would this then lead to Elon Musk and co saying, hey guys, look at Archer, they're making a bunch of money over there, they're doing awesome, let's get those flying cars for everyone. And that would be the argument for that. We've actually talked about this subject before on the channel, and it's kind of a similar one to drones everywhere, because Amazon would like to start shipping packages to you with drones and these kind of things. The problem is that if you get all this air traffic, right, and there's any kind of crash or malfunction, stuff like that, we're literally just going to have stuff falling from the sky. And do we want our sky filled with flying cars and flying air taxis? That's a question I pose to you. If you watch the movie like A Fifth Element, that kind of stuff, or maybe like the newer Star Wars movies would have like taxis everywhere, that kind of thing. Yes, we've have the sort of visions of that sort of stuff happening in the future, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon to have that many. So that's my thoughts on this stuff, and it's always fun to talk about the markets with you. Like to hear your thoughts. Again, we talked about the Bank of Canada, what they're up to, what Nvidia is going on, and also to the GameStop situation, and always some fun things to talk about today on the channel. And thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next video.